Welcome back. I'm Dagan McDowell for Maria Bartiromo. It's Thursday, May 2nd. Your top stories at 7:30 a.m. Eastern. Earnings in focus. Cigna with a double beat. Dow with a beat on revenue. CBS and Live Nation out later today. Focus on oil. Record U.S. crude production leading to a surge in inventories. Trouble in Iran and Venezuela having an impact. Where the prices are heading from here. Futures are showing slight gains across the board. The Dow unchanged at the moment, giving back the gains from earlier in the session. We had losses across the board in the U.S. markets. 162-point loss on the Dow futures yesterday, with the Federal Reserve held interest rates steady, but the market pulled back, hoping that the Federal Reserve Chief Jay Powell would suggest a cut. But Jay Powell said that's not being considered at this point, so investors a little upset with that. In Europe, the Bank of England leaving rates unchanged and lifting its growth forecast. And in Asia overnight, we had gains on the two markets there that were open, the Hang Seng and the Kospi in South Korea. Measles outbreak, a cruise ship quarantined after a person found on board with the virus, hundreds impacted. And Selena Gomez's new venture, the singer's bathing suit line, designed with people who have had kidney transplants in mind. And Burger King taking a jab at rival McDonald's with its new Unhappy Meal. What it contains, we will show you. To our top story this half hour, the crisis in Venezuela. Thousands of protesters set to hit the streets of Venezuela for a third day as the crisis intensifies. Opposition leader Juan Guaido speaking out for the first time since calling for an uprising against President Nicolas Maduro. Fox News' Kevin Cork live at the White House with the very latest. Good morning, Kevin.
Morning, Dagan. Always nice to be with you. And plainly put, there is a great deal happening on the ground in Caracas and throughout the country of Venezuela, as the pictures have certainly shown us. And that has gotten the attention of both the White House and in particular the president, who has made very clear his intention to support Guaido, even as he faces threats of death and possible imprisonment by the Maduro regime.
Been watching him on the streets and right on the streets where people are being killed, and he's out there doing rallies. He's actually very brave in a true sense. But I've been watching him and watching the moves, and you know, there's a lot of spirit for him, and it is, from a constitutional standpoint, is the way it's supposed to be. He was elected. They should be running it now. At least we could go in and help him a little bit with, and maybe a lot.
Keep in mind what the president was talking about there, the constitutional right. Again, this is a legal circumstance. As for Guaido himself, well, he told Trish Regan that his movement may take a bit of time, but it's actually close to seizing power, again, bestowed upon him by the voters.
It's very close, Trish. And for all the viewers, why? Because we remain in the streets, because we remain united, and the armed forces are listening to us, this message of union, of progress. And it was very clear yesterday in the city of Caracas, in the center of power of Venezuela. So as long as we are mobilized and united, we are very close to achieving our freedom.
Very close to achieving freedom there, Dagan. National Security Advisor John Bolton also told us yesterday all options remain on the table in support of the Guaido regime in Venezuela. Dagan, back to you.
Kevin, thank you so much for that. Kevin Cork at the White House. The crisis in Venezuela having a major impact on oil. Checking prices this morning. Let's take a look at the cost of crude. It's down about $1 a barrel at $62.68 at the moment. Joining us now, the Schork Report publisher, Stephen Schork. But this is an oil industry in Venezuela, Stephen, that has been under pressure, under duress there for literally years. What's new now that would impact the oil market?
Hi, Dagan. Really nothing is new here. We've been watching this decrepit state of Hugo Chávez's Bolivarian socialist paradise kill this industry for the last 15 years. So similar to what we've seen in Iran, keep in mind that the oil markets have received two big geopolitical headlines over the last 2 weeks. We had the Iran sanctions. We're not going to grant those waivers anymore. The market popped on that, but then pulled back. And now we have the ongoing situation in Venezuela. The market popped, but now we're pulling back. So it all comes down to timing. And what we've had now is a market that's had plenty of time to adjust, certainly with Venezuela and with Iran, where their exports have been declining on average 25% over the past 2 years. So Iranian exports are now back to pre-sanction levels. So that's all out there, and the market has had time to adjust for the loss of these barrels.
What about the production that you're seeing here in the United States and the ability for producers, say, in the Permian Basin to ramp up what they're producing even more as we move later into the year?
Yes, and to this point, the U.S. consumer is a bit inoculated from the geopolitical risks. U.S. crude oil production will be 1.6 million barrels a day greater than it was last year. You still have bottlenecks. They have been cleared up to an extent, but you still have bottlenecks getting that oil to the market, which does, to an extent, keep a lid on prices. So at this point, U.S. is strong. We saw yesterday's DOE report, a 9.9 million barrel build. Dagan, that is the 26th largest week-over-week build going back to 1983. So as I said, we're going into the summer. Crude oil supplies are plentiful, and as I always say in the Schork report, at this point you cannot swing a cat in the United States without hitting a barrel of crude oil.
Steve Forbes here. Saudi Arabia, what role are they going to play to try to bring down Iran and make up for the fact that Iranian supplies may be still going down? Are they going to be working with us on that?
To an extent, I do believe that, because keep in mind what I've been saying for the past 15 years. We've seen the largest chasm between the Sunni side, that is the Arab side, Saudi side of OPEC, and the Shia side, the Persian side of OPEC. So certainly, given Iran's hegemonic designs or the changeover that they're trying to promote there in the Middle East, certainly that the Saudi Arabia is going to work on the side of the United States. At this point, there is about an export cushion of about 400,000 barrels a day that the Saudis could theoretically put back on the market should those 1.2 million barrels of remaining exports out of Iran go missing. So when you add that cushion, plus the fact that the United States last year increased its export capacity by 900,000 barrels a day, I do think there is sufficient oil in the globe to accommodate the loss of the Iranian barrels.
And speaking of, let's talk about the importance of our oil industry, Stephen. I'm going to bring James Freeman in here, and our energy industry, and not only how that gives us strength on the world stage, but also how with natural gas, it helps reduce emissions if you're talking about the use of natural gas in power production. So the U.S. liquefied natural gas exports are up 272% to the highest level business to business. This is according to this is since 2016. This is because of a deal that the Trump administration inked with Europe to export our U.S. natural gas. I mean, this is good for us and it's good for Europe.
Yeah, absolutely, and hence why I am a long-term bull on natural gas. Right now, we've been in a depressed market because, once again, similar to what we're seeing in the oil, we are producing loads of natural gas, but we don't have the infrastructure yet to get that fully to the market. So we're in the process of clearing up the bottlenecks. Now, Dagan, this has been hidden through the majority of the Obama administration, because like it or not, in the 2 years prior to 2016, the U.S. industrial side of the economy was absolutely in recession, hence why Trump took the blue-collar states of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio, so forth. So now that that industrial demand is returning to the market, we're seeing that demand that has gone missing for the past 10 years. So when you add growing domestic demand, be it through the commercial industrial side or the power side, plus the export market, once these bottlenecks get cleared up, it is a good thing, especially for the United States. And I do think that natural gas, especially if you're hedging, is an absolute buy long term at this point.
But this goes right to, I bring this up constantly because it pushes back against the narrative that we are a, smoke belching nation driving gas guzzling cars, and our emissions from power plants have gone down by 30% since 2005, something the Journal editorial pages pointed out. because of the switch to natural gas. And not only are we reducing our power plant emissions, but now Germany, maybe their prices will come down because they're importing U.S. liquefied natural gas.
Yeah, certainly lower emissions on natural gas versus coal. And of course, nuclear, you get the zero emission option at the point that U.S. environmentalists want to embrace that. But Stephen, if we could just go back to the Saudi question, they obviously want to keep prices high. If they decide not to ramp up production as our president would like, do you think that could all be, that's just an opportunity for Cowboyistan in the United States to take more market share from the Saudis?
Oh, absolutely. We've seen U.S. exports already make a significant impact on their share on sales going to Asia to that point. And I also want to offer the caveat, though, with regard to Saudis wanting to keep oil prices, quote unquote, high. As the saying goes on Wall Street, you can give your customer a haircut every single week. You can only scalp them once. So there is a limit to how high Saudi Arabia can drive or should want to drive oil prices high, because every dollar tick higher in oil prices is a commensurate downtick in the entry barrier for alternative fuels, which is the long-term demise of Saudi's only viable export at this point.
Stephen, great to see you, my friend. Thank you so much, Stephen Schork.
Thanks, Dagan.
And just to correct something I said earlier, it's Ada Lovelace, not Ada Babbage. It was Charlie Babbage and Ada Lovelace. So I was trying to promote a woman, and I fouled it up. So I wanted to correct myself. Coming up, quenching your thirst. A look at one flavored electrolyte powder that's shaking up the industry. That's ahead, plus fast food fuss. Burger King flipping the classic McDonald's children's meal with its own